to Market Open Direct Connect, a webinar series for companies to tell their story, why it's compelling, and why it's an opportunity to invest. I'm your host, Stuart Walters, and we're joined here today by Technical Director Julian Woodcock and Head of Critical Minerals, Allister Caird of Locksley Resources, ASX code LKY, US listing OTCQB LKYRF. Julian and Allister will provide a company update on the company's Mojave Critical Minerals Project, the transformational partnerships to fast-track antimony processing in the US, and participate in a Q&A post-presentation. A recording of this webinar will be available on Market Open and Locksley's communication channels within the next 24 hours. So I'd like to introduce our guests. Julian, Allister, welcome to Direct Connect, and over to you guys.
Thanks, Stuart. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's webinar. Today, Julian and myself will be presenting a slightly abridged version of the company presentation that we released to the market earlier this morning. In the interest of time and to cater to the large audience that we thankfully have online this morning, we will keep this presentation to a relatively high level. But of course, if there is sufficient interest in more technical deep dives in the future, those are sessions that we can look to conduct. As Stuart alluded to, we will be touching today on some recent appointments to the Locksley team. That we'll talk about the Rice partnership that we announced last week, before handing over to Julian, who will take you through an overview of the Mojave project and the upcoming drilling campaign we have across our desert antimony mine prospects and our Campo rare earth prospects. Okay, with that being said, we will jump into the corporate snapshot. So you'll notice there is a slightly different composition to the board of directors. So Mr. Nathan Lude has stepped aside as non-executive chairman, and Mr. Pat Burke is filling that seat now. So Pat Burke brings over 20 years experience in the corporate advisory and legal. He is a lawyer by background and has an extensive track record in corporate growth, particularly in the resource sector. He also has had board appointments across a number of different markets, so ASX, and NASDAQ, and AIM. So coincident with Mr. Burke's appointment, Mr. Nathan Lude is stepping aside into a newly created role, Head of Strategy, Capital Markets and Commercialisation. Mr. Lude has been instrumental in the recent company growth Locksley has benefited from, and will continue to be very involved and contribute to the corporate strategy moving forward. So thank you for your tenure, Nathan, and welcome, Pat. Finally, on this slide, the current structure, we have a $64 million market cap at current and $6.2 million cash at bank. So moving on to the ever-growing US advisory team. So along with recent appointments of Viriathus and Tribeca Capital, we recently appointed US or Washington-based GreenMet to assist with funding initiatives out of the United States and other strategic objectives. GreenMet have strong relationships with both industry and government, particularly with the Department of Defense, and we will be looking to leverage those relationships and knowledge to grow the presence, Locksley's presence in the US. And then lastly on this slide, you'll note the Rice University appointment as our research partner. So they are the subject of our recent technology collaboration. And that is something that we will detail a little bit now in the coming slides. Okay, so the Locksley Rice partnership is a product of a comprehensive company review of the US technology sector. We've spoken to a lot of national universities and research institutions across the United States. And very early on, we identified a large gap in the supply chain, particularly in the antimony supply chain. And we also noted that Rice had the capability, particularly in their materials science and nanotechnology departments, to fill. So as with Locksley's upstream business, this partnership with Rice aligns very closely with US policy priorities at present with respect to onshoring critical minerals. The addition of this downstream business unit vertically integrates Locksley's business providing a pathway for the Mojave feed to supply the technology collaboration with rice. The ultimate aim here is not just to utilize this technology, but it is also to commercialize the technology. And that provides an additional value stream for our investors. So you can see here it's broken up into 2 individual work streams or thrusts. Thrust 1 is concerned with the antimony processing technology termed DeepSolv. And thrust 2 is involved in the utilization of antimony in the development of advanced energy storage systems. And so we'll touch on both of those thrusts individually now. So DeepSolv antimony processing technology. Thrust 1, as it is termed in the rice agreement, addresses a very large supply chain gap within the US around antimony processing. Historically, antimony is processed using a technology or a method known as pyrometallurgy, but most of you will probably know it as smelting. And essentially what this involves is the superheating of ore to produce the metallic resource in antimony. So as you can imagine, this involves a large amount of energy. It's not easy to produce that amount of heat, and you usually need large facilities to do so. And in heating this ore, you do also produce pollutants, which are then released into the atmosphere, such as sulfur. And this is incredibly environmentally damaging. It can produce events such as acid rain. And it is largely for this reason that this process has historically been conducted offshore, primarily, of course, in China. There are only legacy operations existing in the US. Legacy operation. There is one that we are aware of, and that is a small operation out of Montana. So the technology we are developing in collaboration with rice, known as DeepSolv, is a form of hydrometallurgy whereby an organic solvent is utilized in the process for leaching to chemically recover antimony. So there's no use of external heating elements. And so by contrast, this is very low energy input. It is environmentally friendly. It is highly selective as well, meaning that very little antimony is lost to the processing steps. And it's also scalable as well, which is important for the Locksley business as we mature our project Mojave. So this is a simple visual comparison between your traditional pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy, and then our new DeepSolv technology that we're developing with rice. So as I mentioned before, DeepSolv is a form of hydrometallurgy whereby we utilize what is known as a DES, or a deep eutectic solvent, as opposed to an alkaline or acidic solvent that is used in hydrometallurgy. So DES is inexpensive. It is a closed loop process, and what this means is that the solvent is retained during the processing step. So it's not constantly having to be topped up, which makes it both more environmentally friendly and also more economical. So it's a low energy, low cost, and non-toxic. And then finally on this slide, it is tunable in composition. And what that means is that it can suit a wide variety of feedstocks, which then makes its commercial application much more valuable for Locksley and its shareholders. So moving on to Thrust 2, that is advanced energy storage. Thrust 2 of our rice collaboration is complementary to Thrust 1. So Thrust 1 obviously involves the recovery of antimony from ore. Thrust 2 is focused on utilizing that antimony in the development of these advanced energy storage systems. So in Thrust 2, we aim to address significant drawbacks in conventional lithium-ion systems. Some of you will be very familiar with these. I'm sure at some point or another, we've all seen an image or a video of an EV on fire. And this often occurs due to overheating of these conventional lithium-ion chemistries. They also have limited lifespan, both in cycle length and overall durability and length of the battery. And then in keeping with the theme, these are also, they have a lot of elements that are sourced from China. So the US is extremely dependent on supply chains out of China for these battery chemistries to be developed. So our program with RICE, focusing on thrust 2, is really going to utilize antimony in the alloying of both anodes and cathodes in the development of next generation batteries. So you'll see here on the right hand side, there are a number of characteristics of antimony that we believe will be highly beneficial for the development of these next generation battery systems. So that's a very short summary of our RICE program. We will be conducting a number of different work programs within each of these thrusts. Each of these work programs or stages is around 8 to 12 weeks in length, with a number of stage gates and milestones to be announced to market along the way. But in parallel, I think it's important to note that we will also be engaging engineering firms to assist with the development of pilot scale facilities. And really the idea or strategy behind this is just to ensure there is no lag from the finalisation of these technologies, and that we can take them to commercialisation and scale them up appropriately upon technology development. So with that being said, I will pass you over to Julian now, who will take you through the Mojave project and the upcoming drilling program across both Desert Antimony and the Rare Earth project or prospect at El Campo.
Thanks, Allister, and great to be here at the webinar to present the story as we're progressing rapidly through with the Mojave project. So just as a quick overview, the Mojave project, if you just shoot back a slide, please, Al. The Mojave project is located as shown on the map there in California, but very close to the Nevada border. This provides us with excellent access and infrastructure. On the map on the right hand side, the road, the I-15 snaking through just the southern part of Mojave project leases shown in the red color there, connects through to Las Vegas. That provides us excellent access, highway, we've got power nearby, and very importantly, we are literally abutting and on the doorstep of the Mountain Pass mine. The Mountain Pass mine is owned by MP Materials. It's one of the highest grade rare earth mines in the world, and it's the only producing facility in the USA. And when stood up on the ridge on the southwestern part of our lease, tenement holding there, you can look right down into the infrastructure in the pit. So excellent location. We have around 264 claims, as shown, term the northeast block of the El Campo prospect, which represents about 20 plus square kilometers. And within these claims, we have 2 significant prospects which we're working on, which I'll talk through in the next slides. These are the Desert Antimony prospect, which is a historic antimony mine. The call out in the top right there shows a zoom in of the area with our planned drill hole locations, which I'll go over in a bit more detail shortly. And at the bottom, south part, we've got the El Campo prospect, which is our rare earth prospect, with a number of drill holes planned and approved to be commencing in the near future. This is targeting high-grade rare earth breccia, which we've encountered at the surface. Operating in California, we see as very attractive. They've granted a substantial amount of permits. As I said, we're adjacent to an operating mine, and there are lots of benefits operating in the US, and specifically related to the Trump administration, which is moving domestic supply chains to the forefront and looking to fast-track projects. And these are a number of initiatives that Allister alluded to with engaging GreenMet that we're looking at to provide both support and funding and acceleration of the project. So honing in on the Desert Antimony project, this is a historic area which was operated as a surface workings at a mine in the 1930s, so almost a century ago. And there's some remnant infrastructure at site. There's footings from a smelter that was operating there. And we can actually see adits going into the side of the hill. There's a shaft that goes down about 30 meters and then a number of open voids at surface. So we can actually get in and see up close and personal the vein that was mined. So the vein is a quartz carbonate stibnite vein, stibnite being the antimony mineral. And we've identified at surface a number of floats. These are loose samples, rock chips from in situ vein material. And these have returned up to extremely high grades, up to as high as 46% antimony. A number of surface samples also returned over 17%. and 18 samples over 1.4. So the map on the left shows the spread. The northeast-southwest trend of the pink dots is the vein orientation, which we've both identified through the sampling and confirmed with mapping that we conducted in June, July. We did a thorough geological mapping exercise over this area. And then there's an east-west structure as well, which we have seen rock chip samples up to as high as 44% in. And we are currently assessing the relevance and the importance of that within the geological structure and setting that we're targeting. We have had an initial drilling approval from the Bureau of Land Management here for a few holes, but as I'll go into on the next slide, we saw the opportunity to expand this program significantly, and that's what that approval is currently underway, and we expect to be approved shortly. If you could please move to the next slide, Al. So this is on the left-hand side is a 3D geological model that we constructed from the mapping that I mentioned that we conducted. The colours there, the yellows, the purples, etc., is the rocks. But the important area to visualise here is the orange corridor, which is the broader mineralisation target zone. What this is the corridor within which we've seen a number of veins, 3 to be exact, have been identified at surface, and they're represented by the red colours. But based on the surface mapping, we've identified these veins to occur within this broader corridor, and we believe that there's opportunity for additional veins that could be encountered within that zone when we commence with drilling. The blue lines you see on the image there are the planned drill holes, which was our expanded program, which we submitted back in August, and we're expecting that approval to come through later this month. It's currently under a public consult period within the Bureau of Land Management, and then once that has been completed, we expect that to be expedited through to approval, which will allow us to then move and commence with the planned expanded drill program, which is now totaling over 2,000 meters. Those drill holes will test a series of areas underneath the existing workings, which we've identified, and importantly, targeting that corridor and making sure that the drill holes punch through that corridor to give us the best opportunity to identify multiple mineralized veins. And the east-west structure that I've referred to in the previous slide, that's been tested by the couple of holes on the left-hand side of the image. They're drilled at an orientation where they will test the east-west structural position as well as southern continuity of that broader mineralized target zone. So I'm really excited that the drilling is going to be underway in the near future. I'm actually going out to site this weekend. We'll be going out meeting with the geologist there. We've got a mapping crew out there at the moment, expanding off our initial successful mapping program, which allowed us to pull this geological model together. And we're actually chasing the structural corridor, that mineralization target zone to the northeast and the southwest, and looking at the opportunities of seeing if this zone could continue and potentially deliver as extended target zones. At the moment, the target zone that you see on the screen there is approaching 300 meters in length, and that's what our focus will be on this initial round of drilling. To bring this together, we anticipate and we're working towards producing a JORC exploration target, currently utilizing this 3D geological model, the surface sampling data that we've collected, and bringing that together to anticipate defining a JORC exploration target ahead of the drill testing, which we expect to commence earthworks towards the end of this month and moving into October. If you could just move to the next slide, please, Al, thank you. So moving to the Campo prospect, so this is the second string to our bow, and Antimony is the larger prospect that we're focusing on with the larger drill program. But we also have the high-grade Campo prospect, and this certainly is of significance. Given Mountain Pass in the area, a very large mine, very high grade, significant supply of total rare earth oxides. We have on our tenure there, which is surrounded by the Mountain Pass or MP Materials tenure, areas where we've undertaken rock chip sampling. A couple of rounds of rock chip work that were undertaken in the previous early this year and last year are the initial sampling returned 5 rock chips with results ranging from 3.7 to 9.5% TREO within a 6 meter wide mineralized breccia zone. High-grade results of NdPr, which are the key valuable components within the total rare earth oxide suite, up to over 3%. Notable that that's of comparable numbers and grades that are returned from Mountain Pass. On success of that rock chip sampling campaign, we undertook a further campaign in which we actually achieved a very, very high result, up to a 12% So this is located within a breccia horizon, which is within our tenure, but is outcropping at surface, revealed in trenching. And we are anticipating testing that horizon along about an 850-meter strike length, where we've identified partly through mapping and the geological mapping that we've undertaken. And we will be drilling about 5 drill holes into that. Our approval allows us to drill 5 holes, looking to test the down dip continuity of that structural zone that we've identified. Important to note that from the mapping, the breccia zone is dipping quite steeply to the southwest, about 80 degrees. This is important. It retains the structural zone within our claims, and also, given the thicknesses, it provides the opportunity that if this project were to be mined, underground mining methods would be very suitable at that dip, because it would ensure that stopes would be an effective method. So long hole open stoping would be an effective method for extracting that mineralization. We do also have other opportunities across our ground, the north and northeast block, with rare earth targets. And again, the mapping campaign that I just referred to, undertaking work testing the strike length to the northeast and southwest of the historic Antimony mine, is also focusing on going into virgin areas where we haven't conducted much work, undertaking geological mapping, building up the picture and the understanding of the geology together, collecting further samples and ascertaining the opportunity. We're sitting within the same gneissic corridor within which the Mountain Pass mine is hosted. And so we are certainly optimistic that we'll be able to identify other rare earth opportunities across the broader block. We've got the antimony opportunity as well. And in addition, we have seen in surface samples copper oxides and things. So this is a polymetallic zone where there's opportunity for multiple styles of mineralization. You just move to the next slide, please, Al. So just looking at the timeline of our work programs here, and from the geological aspect, we've got the expanded BLM approvals. So as we've mentioned, we expect them to be getting through their final process of approval later this month. The second field campaign, mapping campaign I've talked about, is underway, which will lead into identifying a JORC exploration target, or determining the JORC exploration target for the Desert Antimony mine. Phase 1 drilling combined at El Campo for the rare earths, as well as Desert Antimony for the antimony targets. We expect to commence within the coming quarter, and those results will spill through towards the end of the year and the start of next year. And we are looking at metallurgical aspects, specifically at Desert Antimony. There is a number of available material on surface from historical mining stocks, etc. We can see stibnite at surface, so we're in the process of looking at commencing some initial metallurgical test work and mineralogical test work to get an understanding of the deportment and the mineralogy, with the objective of producing a concentrate. We also expect to be collecting samples from the drilling, so we're looking at commencing that work. We anticipate from discussions with metallurgical consultants that a simple flotation process will allow us to produce a concentrate, and that concentrate will then be able to flow forward into the test work programs that we have being undertaken at Rice. Subject to the round of drilling that we're about to complete, or commence with and then complete, we anticipate next year going into a second round of approvals and drilling on the back of those results. So that will be a key component of activity in calendar year 2026. Al, if you're happy, I'll just talk about the Rice aspects, or unless you want to jump in and discuss on the timeline with Rice.
No, please go for it.
So yes, as I'll talk through, we've formally initiated the Rice program with Thrust 1 and Thrust 2. That was a key news release that we put out at the end of August, early September. That work is underway. It's commencing. Again, on my trip to the US, we'll be looking to meet with Rice and get some further details on samples, etc., that we wanted to provide in order for that program to advance. We anticipate licensing anything that has been identified, and the technology that we're looking at bringing forwards through towards the end of this year and spilling into next year. The US Advisory Board and Executive Appointments are currently underway. Again, I'll talk specifically to the key appointments that we've had and brought into place to bolster our team and capability within the US. So that is ongoing, and looking at leveraging off the advantages and opportunities that come through investing and developing in the US and bringing that onshore supply. And strategic investment. So looking at engagement with the US through that association, through GreenMet, institutional investors, as we've mentioned, Tribeca have also come on board and looking at growing our backing for Locksley to continue to power us forward.
Guys, fantastic presentation. Thank you for doing that this morning. Such a great time to be involved in the US and critical minerals landscape at the moment. There's been some great questions come through, so we'll get straight onto those. I'll start with you first, Julian. And I know you touched on it, but when do you expect drilling to commence at the Desert Antimony mine? And what are the immediate milestones investors should watch out for once drilling is underway?
Look, the key component here is we've got approvals to drill at El Campo, and as I mentioned, we had approval for a few drill holes at Desert Antimony, so we could commence work immediately, but we see the key advantages obviously bringing all of the work with the expanded program in together. So we are currently in the process of finalising our contractor selection, earthworks. We are actually commencing shortly some initial earthworks just to sort out the access tracks, which we have good access into the areas, just a few creek beds, etc., that we need to clean up. So on the back of that, we expect the approval from the Bureau of Land Management to land before the end of this month, and as soon as that occurred, we'll be moving straight into ground preparation works and then into drilling. So pending that approval, I expect that we'll have rigs turning certainly within October, but we have to throw in the caveat, we are just waiting on that final step of that additional expanded program. Key catalysts and news flow, well, obviously commencement of drilling. The drilling we anticipate to commence initially at the Desert Antimony prospect. So as we start spinning the rigs and getting those holes in the ground, we expect to be encountering veins. So as we get the rock chips from the RC drilling out the ground, look at that, mapping that position of the veins, etc. Getting any visual observations. Stibnite is quite an obvious mineral to identify, so we expect to be able to see stibnite within the chips that we get from the drilling, and then subsequent to that, it will be assay results. So the assay results will be feeding through within the December quarter. What
work are you doing towards defining a JORC exploration target, and when do you think you'll be able to publish that?
Yeah, so as I touched on in the slides, the work has been an accumulation of activities. So first and foremost, we did the geological mapping. We put together that 3D geological model that I showed earlier on. And the second mapping campaign that we have underway at the moment is going to look to expand that model and extend it to the northeast and potentially to the southwest. On the back of that, we'll then bring that together, look to put our lower and upper tonnage estimates within the potential mineralization that we're targeting, and combine that with the rock chip results. So the work is coming together. The field crew's out there. I'll be meeting with them when I'm out there this weekend, and then we anticipate ahead of drilling commencing that we'll get that JORC exploration target out.
Can you provide more detail on the rare earth drilling program at El Campo, including timing and specific goals for the first 5 holes?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we expect and are planning to conduct the El Campo drilling immediately after we've completed the drilling at Desert Antimony. We're yet to determine the pace and rate at which drilling will be completed. This isn't an area we've got that experience with, but typically RC drilling moves faster than diamond drilling. So I'd anticipate the 5 drill holes that we have approved at El Campo will be certainly looking to get underway, if our timeline works with the approvals from the BLM, late October. And then the target of the drilling, as I mentioned, is the steep dipping breccia zone. So we're drilling a number of holes along the strike length of the anticipated target position, and that's really going to give us that first indication of the vertical and strike continuity of that surface sampling that we've completed that's returned the high-grade rock chips as at the El Campo prospect.
Al, there's a series of questions that have come through for you here. How does the DeepSolv technology compare commercially to traditional pyrometallurgy, both in terms of cost efficiency and environmental footprint?
Yeah, that's thanks for that, Stu. It's a question that I've partly covered off in the presentation slides. Traditional pyrometallurgy is categorically different to the solvometallurgy, DeepSolv technology that we're developing in collaboration with Rice. So, I mean, primarily, it's very different in the terms of energy input. I mean, heating a rock or smelting a rock and producing the environmentally damaging compounds into the atmosphere is one key difference, and that's the one reason or one of the reasons this process is not undertaken in the US, which really harks back to the strategy for Locksley Resources is in keeping with the domesticating of these, or onshoring of these US strategic minerals or critical minerals. So it's different. It's different in that aspect environmentally, and it's different in the selectivity of the process as well. So the process we're developing with rice is highly selective and it's tunable, meaning that we can process a wide variety of ore. So not just the ore from the Mojave project, but we will be looking to incorporate ore from alternative sources as well to ensure that the product that we develop with Rice University is applicable for commercialization to a wider market.
Is there a timeline for scaling up DeepSolv process from research collaboration with Rice University into a pilot or demonstration scale operations?
Yeah, so the DeepSolv technology in particular has 4 individual work streams. Each of these is sort of 8 to 12 weeks in length. They each have a number of milestones. A lot of this is detailed in the wider corporate presentation that was released to the market earlier this morning. So please have a look at that at your own leisure. We will be updating the market as we pass through each of these stage gates one by one. But as I mentioned in the presentation, we will also be in parallel engaging engineering firms to look to develop pilot scale facilities to ensure that there is no lag between finalising these technologies with Rice and licensing them and then moving into the larger commercial applications.
What are the potential commercial pathways for antimony-based energy storage applications being evaluated under Thrust 2, and how soon could you move these from research to practical deployment?
Yeah, very similar sort of question to the one that we were just given with Thrust 1. Thrust 2 with the advanced energy storage systems is comprised of 3 different work streams. So again, we'll be advising investors and our shareholders during each of the stage gates of this process. But again, we're in parallel. We'll also be looking to engage engineering firms to scale up these technologies, assist in the manufacturing of pilot scale facilities.
And your partnerships obviously key to this. But how do your partnerships with Rice University, Viriathus, GreenMet, and Tribeca strengthen Locksley's position within the US critical minerals supply chain?
Yeah, so we have an ever-growing network of advisors for our US network. They are really key for our US business from a number of reasons. Some of them are based in the US, some of them have extensive experience with the US markets, and others like Rice are based in the US and conducting all of their research in the US. So they advise us of strategic opportunities within the US, or things that we might have missed being a company operating out of Australia. And so they are really key in forging the US strategy forward and really just introducing us to new relationships within the US to allow for us to apply for funding initiatives or contract funding, things like that.
And with 6.2 million cash at bank at end of September 2025, how is the company positioned to fund the current exploration programs and advance with Rice University collaboration?
Sure, there's always a cash one, so I was prepared for this. So the cash at bank is sufficient to fund the exploration program and the Rice collaboration. So additional funding is unlikely to be required unless the program at Mojave is significantly fast tracked through to development. And similarly, we do expect to scale up and commercialize these technologies quickly. But in both of these instances, there is a wide array of funding available within the US through departments like the Department of Defense or the Department of Energy, which Thrust 2 specifically touches on, and Thrust 1 is really focused on Department of Defense. So both of those departments have a lot of funding opportunities there, and we are actively engaged in those mechanisms and applying for those funding grants and contracts.
And given the antimony market's projected growth from $3.25 billion to $7.4 billion, how does Locksley plan to secure a meaningful share of this market over the medium term?
Another good question. Having a business now that comprises both upstream and downstream sectors, the benefit of Locksley tapping into the increasing and growing demand in the antimony market is twofold. So obviously we stand to produce a resource. So we look to establish the resource at the Desert Antimony mine, but also commercialize these technologies for the wider antimony market in the US. So really the thematic here is focused on filling that supply chain gap. There is a critical need to address the offshore resource and capability in China and to bring that onshore into the US, and that is something that Locksley Resources is dedicated to, and we're constantly working towards that effort.
What are the key advantages of using DeepSolv's closed loop process with deep eutectic solvents compared to conventional acid or cyanide-based hydrometallurgy?
It's a mouthful for most people. Yeah, so DeepSolv, as I mentioned, is an organic solvent, and so it is a form of hydrometallurgy. Some companies refer to it as solvometallurgy. It hasn't been widely used for antimony recovery to date, but we look to develop this in a closed loop system. And again, what that means is just being able to retain the solvent for reuse, and that's a little bit different to hydrometallurgy, where you're constantly having to top up that solvent to chemically leach the antimony. So there are a number of benefits from using a closed loop system, both financial and environmental. So yeah, we're right in the driver's seat here with this technology, and we think its commercial application is vast, particularly in the US.
And given the Department of Energy's emphasis on alternate chemistries for grid storage, what specific role could antimony-based battery technologies play in reducing reliance on Chinese controlled supply chains?
Yeah, so that is really the focus of both of these individual work streams with Rice University. We are really looking to reduce the reliance, or the US is looking to reduce the reliance, and we consider ourselves, a major player playing a large role in this effort. So really, when you're looking at the thrust to and energy storage systems, the lithium supply chain again is largely dominated by China. You have cobalt as well as other rare earth elements. So having a resource like antimony in country and then developing battery chemistries in line with our resource there, I think makes a lot of sense for the company and our shareholders. And so again, it's really in reducing the reliance on offshore imports and processes.
Are there any synergies between Thrust 1 and Thrust 2 that could create a vertically integrated downstream model for Locksley?
Yes, of course. So as I sort of mentioned before, and hopefully it's becoming a little clearer for our investor base, they are complementary, these thrusts. And what I mean by complementary is that you use Thrust 1, the processing of antimony, to recover the antimony initially, and then Thrust 2, I guess you could consider it as a process being a little bit further downstream. We're looking to utilize that antimony in the development of these advanced energy storage systems. So they are all complementary, both Thrust 1 and Thrust 2. And then both of these downstream initiatives are also complementary to our upstream business. So what we're really trying to do is strengthen that vertical integration, which gives more value to our investor base, provides additional value rather.
And given Locksley's OTC listing, what is the broader strategy for attracting US investors? And could an uplisting to a senior US exchange be considered in the future?
Yes, certainly. So the OTCQB listing is a recent initiative by the company, and really the strategy behind that is to broaden the company's exposure in the US. Obviously, we have a very strong supporter and investor base out of Australia, but for us, it also makes a lot of sense to tap into investors and residents that are in the US currently and are hearing these regular updates and policy shifts from the Trump administration. So what we really want to do is tap into them and give them the opportunity to invest in the company and come along on the journey. With respect to updating or upgrading our listing to, say, the OTC QF, this is something that we are considering regularly. We just need to do it when the time is right. But certainly, we would consider doing that or listing on other markets to benefit the company and its shareholders and this journey that we have with the critical minerals at Project Mojave.
How does the Rice University collaboration align with US federal government initiatives like the Department of Energy and Department of Defense critical minerals programs?
Yeah, so I think I alluded to that in an earlier question. They are very closely aligned with different department initiatives. So antimony is used a lot in defence applications, and so for that reason, processing and recovery of antimony is really in the crosshairs of Department of Defence funding and interest. Similarly, Thrust 2 is obviously focused on energy storage systems. So then you're looking at interest and funding from the Department of Energy. So it's really been structured in a way to maximise the funding, the applicability for funding initiatives out of the United States. So they are complementary to one another.
What role will Locksley's US-based advisory network play in navigating regulatory approvals and accelerating project development timelines?
I mean, they are invaluable, particularly GreenMet being in the US. They have deep connections into Washington and the government, and so they can advise of any policy shifts or upcoming opportunities for the company. So they are really critical for us in navigating the US market and really building our presence in the US.
So is DeepSolv a better process for the environment? It was hard to understand. Is it something Australia can offer that the US doesn't?
Yes. So DeepSolv is highly beneficial, and it is better than the traditional techniques in the sense of it is much more environmentally friendly. So a lot of the ore where antimony comes from is sulfide based. So in heating or superheating that ore, or smelting it, you are releasing the sulfur into the atmosphere, and that is really the headline, I suppose, of this DeepSolv technology. I mean, the recovery rates are higher in this DeepSolv method, at least theoretically. But it is really the environmental aspect, and that is the reason that these processes are primarily done offshore, particularly in China. So that's the same for the US or China. Most of these processes, the same for the US or Australia rather. So these processes are conducted offshore, and this DeepSolv technology, which Locksley intends to have the sole or the global license for, can be deployed in different jurisdictions. So it's not only beneficial just for the US market, but it's also for the wider global market in antimony recovery or processing.
Julian, probably back to you. What's the expected depth of drilling the drilling programs?
At El Campo, we're looking to test approximately 100 meters below surface with one of our deeper holes, and a number of the holes will be testing around the 50-meter horizon. At Desert Antimony, deepest aspect we're looking to drill is probably around 100-120 meters from surface. However, it's not quite as clear cut at Desert Antimony because of the topography variation. Some of our deeper holes, whilst they're testing about 120 meter below the collared position of the drill hole, due to the topography going up, we expect to be testing probably closer to the 150 to 200 meters below surface in some of those holes. Some of the shallower holes are testing approximately 60 meters below surface. So we're really looking at that between 100 to 200 meter range for both projects.
Thank you. Guys, that's all that's come through for today. Some great questions and amazing presentation earlier. So thank you for taking part in this morning. For more information about Locksley Resources, you can head to the company website, locksleyresources.com.au, or you can follow the company's active social media channels, or join up to the company's Relate Investor Centre via the company website. Again, thank you for presenting today. It's certainly an exciting time ahead for you and the company and all shareholders involved. I wish you all the very best and look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks very much. Cheers.